What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about 3 things I hope The Witcher 3 improves when they come out with their upgrade for next gen. Now, truth be told, up until 3-4 weeks ago, I wouldn't have been able to make this video because I'd never played The Witcher 3 all the way. Well, dear viewer, I have done so. I have beaten The Witcher 3. At the current time of recording, I also beat Hearts of Stone, and I'm about to start Blood and Wine. I've put in around 110 or so hours into the game, which is probably low for some of you, and that's completely okay, but I feel like I have a good grasp of it now, okay? And by the way, I'm not asking for a lot from this list. I don't know if there will all be figured out, if they'll all be implemented. Some of these things are easier than others, and it definitely depends on how serious this next gen upgrade is going to be. Is it going to be literally just improvements in terms of like loading and visuals, or can it be more than that, right? That's a question that we don't really know for sure, right? And I'm sure we'll find out over the next little while. So let's jump into these. Number one is what I just mentioned, is the load times. This is probably, and now, by the way, Witcher 3 is a phenomenal game, okay? It's one of the best, if not the best, open world game ever created. I had always kind of thought that, but now I kind of know that now that I've played it. There's very few things, in my opinion, that is wrong with this game, okay? And actually, the things that are wrong with it are the only ones that I could think of that I wrote down. The loading is one of them, though, okay? The loading is god-awful, and maybe it's awful now because, I was actually playing it on the PS5. It's the PS4 disc, but, I put in the PS5. Loading times have definitely gotten better. I think one of the better examples is even Ghost of Tsushima last year. That was probably the fastest loaded open world game I've ever seen in my life. You could, you could like fast travel in that game, and literally you will just appear there. It's actually insane, and I don't know how they did it on PS4, technology. So that's definitely an issue. When you die, now I died quite a bit, especially in Hearts of Stone, because I wasn't exactly, I was higher level than what I should have been, but I wasn't, I guess, high enough, and I did die quite a few times. And dying in this game is one of the worst things you could possibly do, because it probably takes anywhere between 45 seconds, maybe a little bit more, 45 seconds to a minute, maybe a little bit more than that, to come back in. When you're fast traveling, it doesn't take as long, but it does take a little. It takes, 10, 15, 20 seconds. Again, is that a bad thing? Well, back from what we experienced back in 2015 and years before and even years after, I truly don't care. It's just that nowadays, loading obviously is a big deal. And with these next-gen consoles, we can now do loading much, much faster. It can literally be seamless. So that would help quite a bit, where especially, if you die, you come back about a quarter of a second later. That's really cool. I don't think it's the most important thing of any game to ever have, but I do think it's a pretty cool thing, and definitely would make the experience better. Now, beyond that, these next two, and the only other two, are more things that I want fixed, but I don't know if they'd be able to do it, and so bear with me. The first one is Roach. Now, look, we all love Roach. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we hate Roach. However, let me tell you something. I'm going to say it straight up honestly. If you don't agree, that's completely cool. It's okay to disagree. Roach's driving in the game, right? Like actually steering, I don't know, however you want to say it, is maybe the worst I've ever seen in my life. And okay, that is a little bit of an exaggeration, but again, I think over the last 6 years, open world games that have done horse, being able to maneuver with a horse, it's a lot better with them than it is with Roach. There's just some situations where he'll get stuck, he'll stop on a dime, it'll be very difficult for him to turn. Some of the, and again, I'm not going to lie, some of these games, almost, and maybe it's just me, you try to fool them, right? Like if you need to get to an area that's over a mountain, maybe you see how far your mount will take you, right? So maybe you try to go up the mountain, maybe you'll fall down, maybe you get on an edge and then you kind of slide down. It's very difficult to do that with Roach, right? It's hard to actually fool the game if you're high up and you want to almost and Geralt can slide, but Roach really doesn't. And some of them will. Some actually, like in Red Dead, right? The horse will literally tumble over and die if you do something like that. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but I would like it where Roach is just a little bit easier to maneuver. He doesn't stop so, I don't know, awkwardly. And not even just stopping. He doesn't get stuck on so many weird things, right, that it seems like he does. Maybe it's just me. I honestly doubt it. But this is something that I would like improved about the game. And the third thing, again, and by the way, Roach is almost nitpicking, I would argue, okay? This one is probably nitpicking, is interacting with, loot or anything you have to pick up. So again, like when Witcher 3 came out, I played the game for roughly 6-7 hours, okay? Watched my cousin play it, maybe a couple more hours, and that's kind of it. So again, like I have a lot more experience now, but it's after playing over the last 6 years since Witcher 3 came out, a lot of games and a lot of open world games. And it's one of those things maybe that at the time probably felt fine, but over time feels like it's a little bit outdated when you're interacting with anything, okay? So again, I was playing on PlayStation, so we're talking about the X button, right? When you're examining things or looting things, I really don't like it. It's one of the worst, in my opinion, it's one of the worst things, if not maybe the only worst thing in the game. You have to be very specific where you are, and it does, I think, have to do with Geralt, because he moves somewhat awkwardly and he kind of stops and turns weird, okay? I don't know if that's something that you can necessarily change, but some of, actually not even some, oftentimes you would get it where going in, like trying to examine something or trying to loot something, if you're not looking at it perfectly or you're not standing in the exact right spot, you're not going to be able to interact with it, right? Or the worst case scenario is when there's like several things to loot and they're kind of stacked up, right? They're kind of like those almost those bags that are kind of stacked on each other. That's the worst, because the game half the time doesn't know which one you're trying to examine. Again, is it nitpicking? Am I saying The Witcher 3 is the worst game of all time? Of course I'm not saying that, right? And I'm sure there's going to be an idiot or two that thinks that's what I'm saying, right? I'm not. Again, these are very small things, but they do, specifically I guess for this one, it does make a big impact, because 60% of the game, let's say, is you moving around doing things and interacting and using your Witcher senses and all that stuff. So those are things that I would say maybe an honorable mention is what I just mentioned, Witcher senses, right? When you're tracking things, whether it's a monster or whether it's a human being, right? And you're looking at their footsteps, their footprints, sometimes and I don't know if this is true, it feels like the game can't load it in fast enough, right? So if you're like following footsteps and you can't exactly run when you're doing it, right? If you're holding the Witcher sense, you can't run full speed, but you can go somewhat quick, and sometimes you can almost go past it because it's not loading fast enough to let you know, almost like the distance, you know what I mean? So you're looking at the footsteps and the distance doesn't go far enough where you can like safely follow it through twists and turns. Many times I've followed it, walked past it, and then realized, oh, it must have turned left or right, but the game didn't really show it to. Now, maybe that's like a peripheral distance thing with Geralt and his Witcher sense. Maybe it's not supposed to show you that. I get the sense that it's because the game can't load in those footsteps fast enough as you're moving to interact with them. They can't do it. So maybe that's an honorable mention as well. That's not really something I have complained about, like to myself or my wife when I'm playing it, right? It's like, dang it, I missed the footstep. Like, nobody's really saying that, but it is something that I just thought of. So those are my 3 things. Again, obviously the loading time is the most important. Obviously the visuals, which, I mean, it still looks really good, but the visuals are obviously going to be important and something that they fix. I do hope, though, those specific things I mentioned at the second half, I hope those are things that they've looked at as well. And if not, fine. Hopefully, I assume they will be improved with the next Witcher game. That's all. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you guys want to follow me over on Twitter or subscribe to my second channel, or if you guys want to support us on Patreon or YouTube memberships, all the links for those are in the description below for you guys to check it out. I'd be much appreciative of it. There will be more videos on Witcher 3 in general, with me, A, beating the game, and B, with the next gen upgrade coming. I will definitely be covering it quite a bit on the channel, okay? Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you all on the next video.